Khalil Gibran once said, "Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." The Vulnerable Power Show is a deep dive into the heart of leadership. Hear raw insights and wisdom from experienced leaders who transformed during their dark night of the soul journey, now bringing light to the world. Spotlighting heart-centered leaders that have transformed, stepping into their fullest light and mission. Learn how you, too, can weather life's storm and thrive. What are the keys for successful personal growth and life-changing transformation? It is my intention to bring you wisdom, empowerment, hope, and inspiration, so you too can ascend to your fullest light as a leader, to bring about impact for the collective good. Greetings, everybody. Welcome back for another edition of the Vulnerable Power Show. Today, it is even more of a treat than usual, and we're going to take a deep dive into the heart of Tanja Seagraves, a beautiful soul sister. And as always, I like to introduce the concept, why we're here. We're here to show the inside of transformation in order to inspire and bring hope for other leaders that they can dive deep, do that inner work for practical impact, and also to show the heart-centered nature of leadership. And my special guest and dear soul sister, the way we met is through my eldest sibling. Very unique story, which before we hit record, and she'll tell you in a moment, I didn't remember this isn't the actual first time we met, and she'll tell you in a moment, which is a funny story and very much connected to my, the concept of this first book. Is when I thought I first met Tanja was at a movie, actually. I was very excited because it was going to be one of the first movies I was going to attend with my nephew, my sibling, and my sister-in-law, who Tanja works with. And unfortunately, my brother couldn't come, and Tanja was sitting next to me, and she's a very gifted healer. And basically, after the movie, said to me, "Are you in pain?" And I was like, "No, I'm good. Everything's fine." And very much in line synchronistically with the theme of Tanja's experience and what she'll be sharing on today's episode. I thought everything was good and I was so numb, and she literally helped save my life. I was working with her, and I still do. And I thank you. And this is really significant for me to have you on and to have you share this space. So, can you share before you dive in, when was the actual first time that we met that I didn't remember? Can you share with the audience?
So actually, the first thing I would like to say, Hass, thank you so much for having me on the show, because, I would never really talk about my life and my experience because I like the comfort of my cave. I might share it every now and then in a one-on-one session when I think the person needs to hear the story, but usually I'm pretty much,
laying low. I respect that. Yeah.
So I can't remember the first time we met, but it must have been the same year. I was working, with your sister-in-law, and I can't remember who I was treating, probably one of the family, and you came in to my cave and you didn't even greet me. And I just observed, and I was thinking, what an a-hole.
And it's
That's the first time I saw you.
I laugh because, you're responsible for my healing and my journey back then. It's a very good glimpse. That's why I invoked it, because very much this is improvisational. And this I wanted to mention because when she mentioned it before we hit record, I said, this is perfectly divinely timed, because what a great encapsulation of the before and after, where I was a jerk and didn't know it, as I say. So thank you for reminding me of that, because that was very much how I was. I was very unaware of my presence and all that. So yeah, that's a beautiful way to segue. Why don't you share with us, because I know your story is going to inspire a lot of people, and I do cherish you sharing this space. I value it because I didn't know much about your story, so I'm excited for this. So if you were to share with the audience, the first question I always ask is, what was your experience through transformation, through this proverbial dark night or metamorphosis, what would you, like to start and share with us, Tanja?
Well, so the big event, the transformation, happened over a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I was very sick in 2000. I got very sick in 2004, and I thought I was gonna die. I mean, it sounds not, just like people say, oh, I thought I was gonna die. I seriously thought I was going to die. I was laying on the couch. I couldn't walk. I was like paralyzed. I couldn't eat anything, and I was just looking at all my travel photographs. I was still back in Germany, and I was sitting there and I was thinking, well, at least I've traveled, to different countries. I've been to Central America, West Africa, and I was looking at all those pictures. I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna die, so be it. But I still didn't want to die. There was that thing inside me, but I just didn't know what to do. Because I was working back then, I was working in corporate finance. I was totally burned out. I had a very stressful job. I had this, so I was born with a, prenatal malposition. So back in the 70s, my mother didn't have an ultrasound, but given the fact, so when I was born, and they didn't even show it to my mother, they told her like 7 days later when she left the hospital, oh, by the way, we have to show you something. And they showed to my mother what was happening with my leg, and my mother passed out. And I think that's also where I took on this fainting, because it was kind of like the theme later in life for me. So back in 71, in the hospital in Germany, you give birth, you see your baby, but then usually the baby's in a nursery, so the baby doesn't stay with the mother in the room, and they would just bring me to my mother to nurse, but my mother never really inspected me, like if all the parts on my body, are fine. I also couldn't nurse. I mean, we know now with all this left rotation in the fetal malposition, my lip tie, my tongue tie, of course I couldn't nurse. I mean, it was just like.
So you're talking about your anatomy now, your structure.
Exactly. So it's like, that wasn't possible. And then, they showed my mother the leg, which was like, my mother, it was just floppy. It was like, you could bring the toes all the way to the tibia. You could put the toes all the way back to the, back of the leg to the calf. And yeah, so that's how it started. And then they were just saying, oh yeah, and by the way, so you have to put this cast on the baby, and you have to, bandage it, every day.
Right.
The way they taught them, my parents, they tied it too tight. So that's a pain that later on in life, that sometimes now even the pain body, the memory, like 49 years later, it's still coming up sometimes. It's so intense because you can't do anything about it. It's not like I can take an ibuprofen or something, make it go away. It's a memory in the body.
Right.
So that was one of the.
So this is right when you were born. So you had this immense amount of pain.
Yes.
Coming right into this lifeline.
Yes.
Your initial experience.
Yes. And my parents said, and also my other relatives, Tanja never threw a tantrum. Tanja never cried. I was probably just like, what the heck is going on here?
Wow.
Yeah. So then 2 weeks later, I was 2 weeks old or 3 weeks old. They went, to the orthopedic doctor again. He's like, oh no, you can't bandage it this way. It's just too tight. So,
would you say real quick? So, and I appreciate you going into the details. Would you say that you kind of that affect, right? That you never cried or anything. Would you say, what were you doing? Because it sounds like you were doing something to the pain. So what can you elaborate on? Were you actually fine? In other words?
No, I don't even know, but I was dissociating. It's like,
okay.
That's also then the theme, throughout life. So anyway, then when I was always a happy kid, very extroverted. And I was always happy for everybody else. So if it would be someone else's birthday, I would go like, hey, it's my sister's birthday today. It's like being happy for others. And yeah, so.
Like neglecting yourself in a sense.
Of course. I was
kind of like my experience was.
Yeah, just like, extroverted and happy for everything. But I also always wanted to explore everything by myself. So I had this nickname in Germany, like even by the neighbor kids. When I wanted to explore something and they wanted to help me, I would be like, no, I do it by myself. So that was like my nickname. Tanja does it by herself. So it's like, I have to explore it.
Fascinating. Because I was similar. It's like this stubbornness in a sense. I would call it my own, like, because I wanted to do it myself. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it's because you want to explore, right? I mean, I just look at it like this curiosity. No, let me figure it out, because I learn through experiencing. So anyway, so it's my whole life, well, my whole childhood, and then also as a teenager, I had a lift under my shoe. So when I started walking, I also had hip braces, but then my mother thought that's just torture. So after 4 weeks, she's like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. So she took the hip braces off. When I started walking,
and sorry, keeping it, you showed them to me because you said, can I show them on the, can you show them real
no,
quick?
that's the legs. No, as a baby, I had hip braces, you know, when they really.
Well, in terms of the disparity of the limbs, can you show the shoe disparity really quickly and we can get it out of the way? Because you showed me this before we hit record. And you had talked about this when you started treating me, and I'd never seen it. So can you show what you're talking about now? Which you were
Can
talking
I just say, because I was hobbling a little bit, so then the doctor said, oh, we just put a little bit under the, you know, under the right shoe, so she will be fine. But because I was already always there, like, you know, everybody else, this kind of, this dissociation, not being grounded, because my pelvis, I mean, simple osteopathic treatments could have just, you know,
aligned you.
like when I was a baby, but I would have never been the practitioner. So it is what it is.
It had to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. It's learning, you know, it's the apprenticeship. But then over the years, I always got more under the lift. Probably also anytime I got frustrated or something, you know, it didn't go my way. Maybe it's like, you know, like got a little bit shorter. So
your body responded to the angst.
Yeah. It just goes, you know, everybody has their weak spot. It can be the leg, it can, whatever, you know, that's an individual thing. So then by the time, you know, I think, and it was always like this. I didn't even know it any different. It was also this projection. Tanja has a short leg. Tanja needs a lift under the shoe. I had never gone to a shoe store where I just bought a pair of shoes, even as a kid, where I got a pair of shoes and I would just go home and wear them. No, we always had to bring them to the shoemaker, and they had to make this special, you know, lift, put it under the shoe. I couldn't wear certain shoes. Oh yeah, the right foot is also full size smaller. So it's like, but it's getting better ever since I started treating, you know, with what we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, when we get there.
It's getting better. I think my foot is also going to grow. So anyway, so I was wearing.
So this is now for everybody to see. This is the disparity of your body alignment before you started your healing journey, in a sense. Yeah. Is that accurate?
Yes.
That's huge. I didn't know. I mean, you always talked about it when I started healing with you. You gave me glimpses of this, and now I'm hearing a lot of the details for the first time. So this is good.
But you know what? This is pretty. Wow. Those shoes are still pretty, and it's harmless because, but that, we might go into it at a later time. Because then the doctors, you know, when they really go crazy, they started measuring with new machines, and it was like when I was super sick, we have this amazing machine. It's gonna measure you, and it's like, no, you don't need. What is that? 2.5 centimeter, 3 centimeter. You don't need 3 centimeters under your shoe. You need 4.5 centimeters under your leg.
Oh God. It's like tweak the
numbers. I didn't keep those shoes. I should have, because they were like, can you imagine sneakers with 4.5 centimeters?
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was my.
And I like how you talked about the projection and the stigma. So you were saying, so then as you grew up, so what happened? What continued to happen on your healing journey or your transformational journey?
Okay, so I grew up, for me, it was normal to, you know, it was just normal, but I was always sick. I was obviously, I mean, structurally, if you just look at the whole line and the rotation, it's, and as you get older, because as a little kid, yeah, you can still fend. Oh, I also fractured my nose as a kid. That was probably not very beneficial. You know, all those little things.
You've got the Persian nose. That's why we're also soul relatives.
Right. And yeah, so let's see.
Lots of illness. Wow. That's.
Yeah. And another thing that we didn't even talk about. So when I was 17 or 18, I wanted to have, and there was those funny stories. I mean, I can laugh. Even back then, I always kept the sense of humor. I think if I would not have had this sarcasm, a sense of humor, I would not have survived all this. So when I was 17, I wanted to have contact lenses. So I go to my what are they called, optometrist? Still back in Germany. And he is like, oh, there's something with the right eye. There's like pressure. Maybe there's a tumor behind the right eye. Now for me, what I know now is like, of course, there's a lift under the right leg. Everything is shoved up and rotated. Of course, there's pressure on the right eye. But you know, what do you tell doctors? It is what it is. So anyway, he's like, you have to go to the clinic, to the specialists. So my parents already freaking out because my aunt died of cancer and had a brain tumor when I was a little kid. So Tanja has a tumor behind the eye. Again, projection, and also me taking on, you know.
Everybody started freaking out.
Stuff, right? Either passing out. If I could never visit someone in the hospital because I would always faint.
Wow. And you said earlier, so that was your response also to that infancy pain, that to disassociate, you would pass out in a
Yeah.
sense, automatically
It's like
to
playing possum. I'm
yeah.
done. This is just too much. Go back to my soul level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got into the hospital, and then they did some tests, and then I had a spinal tap because they wanted to see if I have a brain tumor. I mean, yeah.
Wow.
So I had a spinal tap when I was 17.
Wow.
That put me into like a really, that was so bad.
I heard those are so painful.
Oh my God. I had side effects. I had this, because you get a spinal tap, then you have to lay on your tummy and you have to drink a lot. And then my kidneys stopped working.
Wow.
So I thought I was going to die in
Yeah,
the hospital.
renal failure as a result of the spinal.
Yes.
Wow.
And then, but of course, what we know now with me being so empathic and tuning into everybody. So it's like, I had this paralyzed woman in my room who had a stroke. And it's like, I probably, that's the thing, because I'm so porous. It's like, yeah, I had my own spinal tap, but I had anybody else's stuff on the neurology. And I was, yes, that's what it is.
It was
My
like
parents,
absorbing into your field, other people's
exactly. My
energy.
parents signed this. They had to sign something so that they could get me out of the hospital, because I just needed to get out. I had some constant migraines. So they got me out. I was laying in my dark room for like, I don't know, a whole week. And then I was kind of okay. So that was another part.
Well, I like that, because I see this now in hindsight as we're talking about this live, that our personalities are similar, because I likewise, I disassociated, and then the laughter, the humor, the sarcasm is similar for me. It kept me going. And they do say humor and laughter is healing medicine. So perhaps that's why we did it. So that's interesting that you have that. And for the audience to know, we can laugh about it now, because there's this notion of transforming the pain, as we're talking about. So you were saying.
Before I really transformed it, I was still laughing about it. It was more like, oh my God, here comes another thing. But then also what I was just saying with the appendix surgery on top of it. So I was 12 or 13. That was a whole, say again, the right side, the right side, the lift, they cut into it, whatever they messed up. Yeah, and then let's see what happened then. Oh, and then 1994, I traveled to Nigeria.
Oh wow!
With a Nigerian friend, and I stayed with locals. And
why were you there again? You mentioned it once when I first met you.
Oh yeah, it's like I had a Nigerian ex, so we traveled together to stay.
Oh, personal life.
Yeah, it's personal. But so prior to traveling, I got the yellow fever vaccine and the hepatitis whatnot. I don't think it was B. I think it was A or whatever. C vaccine back in Germany. I got so sick. I got fever. Of course, what we know now is like what if you give me pharmaceuticals that are supposed to prevent something, I would get that what it's supposed to prevent.
Yeah, we won't go down that rabbit hole for now.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're gonna touch upon that, I sense, down in this interview later.
Right. So I got sick. I'm like, ugh. But since I was always sick, it's like, because when you are young, that's another thing I can see. And also in my studies, when we're younger, we can shake off certain things. That's the structural thing, the sphenobarbital
resiliency.
Yeah. The joint, the main mover in the body is not fused yet. So we can still, shake certain things off. But I was at that, how old was I? 23. Yeah, I was getting, was getting bad. So then malaria prevention medication, and Tanja travels to Nigeria. It was also my first flight. I thought I was going to die. I had to fly from Düsseldorf to London. I'm like, I had this gentleman sitting next to me, and he's like, you have to breathe, because I was just sitting in the plane I just couldn't breathe.
I'm laughing because this is how I was when you first met me. I didn't know you were as bad as me.
All the stress on my central nervous system from birth, which had not been acknowledged, and just always something else. And then, of course, in Germany, it's like a good German, dies while they're standing. It's like, you don't give up. It's like,
oh, definitely. That's why the Persians get along with
my wall.
Yeah, same way with, this. You met my parents. Same thing culturally is, don't slouch. The conditioning, which I'm sure you'll probably touch upon too. So keep going. You were saying.
So then I traveled to Nigeria. I mean, by the way, we flew from London to Lagos. I was breathing again. So it was on a bigger plane.
You did resume
I was still smoking on the planes. Can you imagine? Oh my goodness. I think I also smoked back then. Every night.
On the plane? Oh, those were the good old days for the smokers. Back in the days.
So then I arrived in Nigeria, getting out of the airport, and I'm like, wow, this feels really good. I really liked it. I liked the smell. I remember that. And I'm also very, I'm very animalistic, like this intuitive instinct. Like, I like the smell. But the chaos was just crazy. And all of a sudden I figured out, oh my goodness, when you're white, you're like a bright light in the darkness. Everybody can see you, and you don't see what is around you. So anyway, then we had to drive to another city. I saw things I had never seen before in real life, horrible things. But of course, Tanja, that's the other thing. That was my MO. It's like, I cannot just sit in the car and cry because for them it's normal. It was like, you can, because I would have just been a train wreck and crying all the time. So again,
Seeing
my
the
MO
misery and
was
that
not
stuff.
cry.
Yeah.
Because, you will see kids, and even in the city, you would see kids sitting by a puddle and drinking the water out of the puddle. It's like, what the heck? So anyway, then we arrived and I was still popping my malaria prevention. So now I don't know if it was just the malaria prevention medication or this one woman, because everyone's like, oh, you have to meet the aunt of the neighbor. And I'm like, okay, whatever. What am I going to say? So we go and visit this aunt. And this woman gets super excited when she sees me, and she's doing like a dance and a traditional thing and hugging me and shaking me around and all that stuff. And I'm like, then she's rolling on the floor. I think she was already trying to get something off of me, but I had no clue. I was still Tanja in corporate finance. What did I know?
Like energetically trying to get something off of you.
Yes, I had no idea, because I was just like, oh, this is really interesting. Maybe that's what they do all the time when they have a visitor like from Europe.
You thought it was a custom. They're like throwing holy water on you and chanting prayers. And you're like, oh, this is
on the floor. I'm like, what? And you can put me in every situation again, like I said, and I can zip it and watch it. And I'm like, interesting. But after that, I got sick. So that it came up in one of my sessions also in a reflection. She wanted to take that, something off of me, but it wasn't the time, or I couldn't handle it. So I went into
slow down on this, because it's interesting. So what I'm hearing from you, she tried to actually heal you, but your body wasn't ready.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that? Because that's important, right? Because on another episode, somebody talked about process and we talked about timing. Yes. So can you elaborate what that means as a practice? I know we haven't gotten to that part. What happened from your perspective to your body when she tried to heal you before you were ready?
So it happened sometimes even later on in life when I was already working, when I switched everything and I gone through my transformation. And if someone, it happened to me before. Now I'm blanking out. I think I'm not supposed to talk about it.
Oh, okay, no worries.
There's a part that goes blank. Oh, it happened to me before. Because I'm so porous and empathic, and because back then I didn't have all the tools together, and especially like in '94, I didn't know anything. What did I know? I thought just like, everything is just what it is. Everybody, and I also thought everybody feels the same. So I thought everybody is the same.
This is normal.
It's actually nice, because I always thought everybody is the same. My experiences, everybody else has them.
That was so my experience, Tanja. Oh my God, keep going. This is amazing.
So it's not just being projected on, but also projecting out.
Exactly. Everybody's like this. This is normal. Everybody's like this too. Yeah,
exactly. So, what I was saying is, I had this happen a couple of times, even just within the last 10 years, when someone would give me a treatment, or especially like I went to see a shaman from Peru when they came here, one of the from the whatever. I'm not good with
the heritages. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, we talked about this once a long time.
So when you clean me too fast, I am so open and porous that I literally like feel everything so intense, so it kind of like makes me sick. So what this woman did, whatever she did, but she obviously, that's why they probably also brought me there. So she wanted to take something off, but me, had the vaccines that already made me funny, and then with this malaria medication, which I just found out 4 years ago that it's actually, if you Google that medication, it has been developed by the American military. Soldiers go crazy on Lariam, and of course here's tiny Tanja from Germany, and my internal medical doctor, like my family doctor, he's like, you need Lariam prevention medication. So I seen that woman. We went back to the house, and that's when the horror started. And I always thought, I've never been on drugs, but then thinking about it like years ago, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I have done drugs once on Lariam in Nigeria.
Not quite what people mean when they ask you. I've done some really good malaria drugs, everybody.
Yes. You know what? It caused so much PTSD, and I've worked through that, obviously. That's why I can talk about it. I was laying on the bed. I was in so much pain. So I had the symptoms as if I had malaria. And on top of it,
Wow.
I experienced, so that's the thing, because the people around me, they didn't see it, but it's for me, that's the somatic, the psycho-spiritual component. I had shackles around my ankles, and I had those iron shackles around my ankles, which wasn't true. I didn't have that, but
This is the feeling now that you're describing that
while
you
I'm
had.
hallucinating. So I have those shackles around my ankles. I have those iron chains on them, and they were tied to the bed, my shackles, my ankles, and then up on the ceiling. So anytime I woke up, I mean, I used to pass out. That was the thing. I think it was going on for 3 or 4 days. I would pass out, faint, leave my body. I would come back, and then I would have this horrendous. I mean, I had more later on in life, but then I was able to observe them and also got, anyway, I got pulled up to the ceiling, like, vroom. I even heard that sound, and I felt it, like, vroom, and then thrown down again, and then I would pass out again. And I remember the family, they were just sitting next to my bed for 4 days, and they were just praying. So that was like that was a very big thing. So whatever she took off of me, but I was just healing some collective thing in Nigeria, because that's that was like plain on like slaves.
There's a lot going on energetically, in that space.
It was also interesting because I have a lot of, obviously I have deja vus very often. I remember on that vacation we drove by it was going from one city to the other, and I saw a house. I saw a white house that looked like one of those, from, what were they called? Oh,
like a scary movie?
No, like the British people who were there. What were they called again?
Oh yeah, I get what you mean.
And I drove by that house. I'm like, oh, I've been here before. So I had a lot of deja vus in Nigeria. I mean, that's why I had to go back. I had to heal a part of my spirit, or who I was before I came into this life. But then again, corporate finance, Tanja, auditing, reporting, computer programming. It's like, what did I know? I'm like, oh, I've been to that place before. I had a lot of deja vus in Nigeria. And of course, everybody would always tell me, oh, I want you to see my whatever. They brought me to their blind mother. Then I had to go and see those, the twins. They were just born, and they were like so tiny. And I was very skittish always. That's the thing, because I used to faint in the hospital, like I said. So now you're bringing me to your sick relatives. I'm like, I don't want to go. I'd see them. I'm like, leave me alone. Oh, he fractured his legs. We have to take you to the hospital. So they took me to like a local hospital, which was not a hospital. It was like a backyard shack. And then they were laying there on mattresses on the floor, and they were all just moaning. And so horrific. So that was my experiences when I was in my 20s.
It's interesting because as you're like unpacking this, I learned from you, and really my brother is the other person, this spirit, this soul body connection. And I relate because as I was, corporate attorney and mediator, and merely in that hemisphere and that paradigm, energy, I knew energy was around me. So maybe a little bit different, I had that luxury being around my sibling. So maybe a little bit different from your experience. Still, I ignored it. So it's fascinating to see.
Yeah. I had zero support. Nobody ever told me anything. And I just thought I don't know what I thought.
Well, yeah, that's the point. And this is what's amazing hearing. Yeah, it's amazing hearing this, because it's, again, eerie seeing the synchronicity and it being mirrored back, because that's the lack of awareness. And then we stay silent and we presume, oh, everybody's like this. This is normal. And then there's no this is some ancient stuff and wisdom traditions that about.
I also just thought I got sick.
Exactly.
I also block things out.
Yeah, we keep it material and we block it and compartmentalize it.
That's how I was raised also, like Western medicine, you go to a doctor. So then I came back from Nigeria. I mean, I liked it. I even went back a second time. The second time I went, I stayed for 4 weeks because I liked it so much. Unfortunately, the transformer broke, so we had 2 weeks without electricity. That was horrible.
Thank God for God bless, because that makes me grateful, really. That's a good highlight.
Right. So I came back to Germany, and then it was winter, and I was completely changed. I was already very empathic with everybody anyway. I was, that's why I was so annoyed when you came in and you didn't acknowledge everybody in the room. Because I would walk into a space, I would acknowledge everybody. At least I would try to give everybody my attention, which is not always healthy, but I'm just saying. I came back to Germany, and then they were complaining about, back at work, and I was still recovering from a hallucinating spell, but also from what I saw, like how people live differently. But for them, it's fine because they're not living there like whining all day, like, oh, we live here in Nigeria. No, it's normal. They're having fun. I threw parties for the kids, dancing. We just needed like $1 to buy a lot of Coca-Cola and snacks, and they were all dancing and having fun. And they were always calling me Oibo Peppa because I'm white. It's like, they're having fun. So seeing it that you can have, if you don't know it any different, you're just living like this. It is what it is.
Would you say?
I always had this filter of like, this is horrible. How can someone live like this? But that was the lesson to also understand.
That's what I'm saying. Do you feel like that, before you continue with that, with what your experience was, do you feel like that opened you up more to like gratitude and then the heart, what I would call a heart activation? Do you feel like that was?
No. Oh, I forgot. Then another thing that happened, which of course set up everything that happened later, but I have to mention this. So so in the south of Nigeria, people are very much into church. It's like their whole thing. Outside the work can fall apart. And then for me, being German, where everything is always neat and clean, so they have like piles of trash. They don't care. They sit 4 hours in the church singing, while I'm like, well, you could just go outside and clean it, and then maybe be 1 hour in the church. Bringing my German,
keep it tidy, keep it organized
thing to this country. And I had to go to church. And I'm Catholic, I mean, that's how I was christened and stuff.
And were you religious growing up?
No, not really. I mean, I received my Holy Communion, but it was more like, it is a traditional thing, just like, I don't know what every culture has a traditional thing that you just do.
You kind of went along with it.
I got my communion. I think I also got my confirmation. Can't remember. And then that was it. I paid my taxes. In Germany, you pay taxes for the church. So then Nigeria, I had to sit in. Yep, that was another important thing. So I had to sit. I had to sit in, because I was friendly, right? Sit in church for 4 hours. It was on New Year's Day. And the pastor preaching, and he was also Pentecostal, the church. And now it's time for donation. Hallelujah. I was so annoyed because of what I had already seen outside, and the suffering, but how they were kind of controlling the people to really bring their last dime or last penny because of the pastor promising them a better life if they donate. It's this thing. Now it's time for donation. You have to donate as much as you expect back this year. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the heck? I felt tempted a couple of times to just get up, go to the podium and tell them this is all BS. But of course I didn't. Obviously, I mean, the only white person in the whole quarter is not going to do it. But I was like, bring on the inside. But again, that was important. So when I came back to Germany, first thing I did, came this atheist. I'm like, this is all just retarded. I'm going to resign from the church. I'm not going to pay any taxes for the church. I don't care about the church. God, what I saw in Nigeria, there's no God. That kind of thing. So I had to go in,
So it actually made you renounce your faith in a way,
yes,
because you saw how bad things were in the world. Wow,
yes,
interesting.
Yes. So that was so that was like the big thing, like really renouncing. And anytime someone in Germany would talk something about the church, like I said, our family, we never really went to church except for when someone got married or someone died. And even then I would be like
compulsory.
I think it was 1 year we went when my grandfather died, and I said to my mother while we were sitting in church, I'm like, this is all just nonsense. Why would we pray for him now? He's dead for 5 days. He already moved on. And especially since he appeared to me that night that he died, I'm like, whatever. So I was always like, let's really like critical of religion, especially after that Nigeria trip. And then when the people were whining like, the kids are standing there at the bus stop, it's snowing, and the cars are so close. And I'm like, well, at least we have a sidewalk. In Nigeria, they don't even have a sidewalk. That kind of attitude is what I brought back.
Right. Which
wasn't healthy for me because it kept me in an anger instead of an appreciation. But it was more like, now I felt like I have to save the world. But I was only 23 or 24. So that was a big theme. And then, obviously.
So like, it's interesting because again, like I called that my why God, why me? And then kind of my, like, this is, if it's this bad, then there is no God vibe. What's interesting is what you're saying now.
Oh, I didn't even ask God. I just told God, no, there's like no God.
No,
No, I don't even ask.
That's the difference between the Taurus and the Sagittarius.
Exactly, because
Don't
the Taurus
ask.
always has to fight with God. It's like the evolutionary path. So it's like the Taurus is like the stubborn child that throws a tantrum. And then I'm gonna tell you now what happens then. If you throw a tantrum, you don't listen. That was probably the only tantrum I ever threw. Maybe I should have thrown a tantrum when I was a kid. I would have gotten that out of me already.
Well, it's interesting because it seems like, yeah, so like similar to you, then I like kind of went away from my faith. And what I was gonna say, and it came back right now, is it was interesting because as you say this, I again see a similar experience, because then I added more internal pressure because I was like outraged and I wanted to like then morally change more because I was a lawyer and justice and all of this. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Which then,
Yeah.
and like you said, it didn't help that internal adding of that self pressure and thinking, because I think this is good for a lot of leaders to hear, Tanja, because
I think
know
for
I didn't.
everybody, because it's like even if they're not leaders, just every person, because we always have something that annoys us. We have to accept, or we want to change it, but we can't.
Well, it's acceptance. And then I think it's like that drive that what if we can change it? And it's good. I like your point. And then I'm seeing it as also this notion of that we don't have to do it alone, you know, and that's kind of what I've been feeling into more. We don't have to do it as a lone wolf. We can do it in a team, which is a lot of what you've helped me with and understanding. So this is interesting. So you're back in Germany. You're like, F this. You know, you're denouncing it. And how are you? How's your health? How are you now in this dark night process as things are, you know, because you're dealing with all this pain, right? Your whole life.
I was always sick. I mean, I would literally, even at work, someone would tell me a story about an accident. Poof, I would pass out while I'm sitting. So usually you pass out when you get up too fast. No, I would sit there and I would like.
You would dissociate.
I'm like, okay, stop talking because I'm gonna faint. And they don't take it serious because nobody just faints while they're sitting. I'm like, don't tell me this. And then she keeps going and poof. Next thing you know, I wake up laying on the floor and my coworker is over me and I'm like, well, what am I doing here? Or I would go to a party, sit next to this lady who tells me about giving birth. I'm like, excuse me, I have to go to the restroom. I have to lay on the floor, just pass out for a minute. Still, I had no clue, right? I'm like, this is just weird. But I was getting because my nervous system was just trying to, I was just trying to function. I also had a very stressful job. I enjoyed my job, but again, no boundaries. Because you can give me anything and I will make something out of it. So of course, my boss in Germany just, took advantage of it. I was the one who was trained in like everything in the finance division. So when anytime someone went on vacation, I would just do their part, because we were headquarters. So we had like 16 people working there. And on top of it, I was doing translations, auditing, reporting, and then we got a new software. And of course, I understand systems and how different systems work together. So I did that also with the lift under my leg, with the.
Well, that's what I'm saying. With all this pain, this illness, this disease, you have all this life experience happening, and then you're also burning out in a sense, driving yourself like I did at work. That's freaking crazy.
And then of course my doctor. So I was always at the doctor because that was already from a young age. I always had a stomach ache. I was always nauseous. I was always nauseous. Oh, I would go and eat. That was another thing. I would go and eat out with, meeting from work. I would eat. We walk to the car, I would break out in hives. My boss will drive me to the hospital. They put me in the hospital to check why I have hives. But of course, when I'm laying in a hospital bed comfortably, I'm not going to break out in hives. I used to break out in hives as soon as I started moving,
Wow.
The nervous Betty or the. So then, so what happened then? Yeah, I was always sick. The worst, it got really bad. It also got really bad when I turned 30. So what year was that? 2001. All my wisdom teeth, they were all inflamed. And then my dentist in Germany, he's like, oh, let's do a root canal. So he did a root canal on a wisdom tooth instead of just pulling it out. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. Inflammation, chronic inflammation. I just thought I was falling apart. There was 2001. I also was in a relationship with someone, which was good, but it was probably not good. And so then now we're coming to 2004. Still a very stressful job. And I was literally going to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I would crash. So I would be on sick leave.
Wow.
Beauty in Germany is you can go on sick leave, you still get paid. But, at work, they started bullying me because they couldn't see it. Because obviously, and even when I was younger, I always looked kind of pretty, but I was sick. And if someone doesn't have an eye for seeing how someone is like really sick, because that's how I have that eye. I can look at someone, I'm like, oh, this person, what's going on? And the parents are like, oh, he looks fine. I'm like, no. that's why I have
like me. Yeah, because I was like, oh, I'm fine. Yeah.
No, it's not fine. So
Yeah.
I was getting sicker and sicker. And so, in the year 2000, I also had mono, which didn't get diagnosed as mono. I was just, again, I had this terrible, later your brother died, found still some markers in my blood. Anyway, that was also downhill. 2000, exactly, in 2001, all the inflammation. 2000, I had mononucleosis. They gave me antibiotics. And I could peel the skin off of my hands.
Wow.
So I stopped the antibiotics.
It's like you're deteriorating up until 2000.
Oh yeah. That was also the first year I ever traveled to the US. So then that summer I traveled to Los Angeles, and I didn't like it because I thought, what is all this power lines like on sticks and stuff? I'm back in the third world here. You know how you have a preconceived idea about something. Of course, I love this area. So yeah, I was sick. I had the mono, then I got.
So what happened in 04? You were saying in 04 something happened.
So then in 04, was that the year when I bought that condo? I can't even remember. Okay, so then in 2004, I bought a condo. Yeah. It was in one of the old, the old buildings from 1914. So prior even to the First World War in Germany. Very, with the high ceilings, the crown molding, and the big windows, and beautiful. But the guy who did the renovation, because they rehabbed it from the inside, he used very cheap material, and the house was humid in the basement, and we didn't know it. So I bought a condo. On top of everything that was already going on with me, I got even more sick. And then we were going on vacation. So my then partner and I, we were going on vacation to, I still had the lift under my neck, to Spain. And as I'm sitting on the plane, and I had such a hard time sitting because of I know I had a compression triad, which is in osteopathic craniosacral therapy. You're compressed at the SBS, at the
back of the neck,
occipital cranial base, and at your SI joints. And I've been compressed forever because you can't even imagine how I walked with that lift. I didn't even walk like a normal person. I just walked like a duck. Weird.
You were functionally and structurally.
I was functioning, but I was falling apart. So I was sitting on the plane, and we were flying to Mallorca, Spain. It was just like a 2-hour flight. I'm sitting on the plane. Just didn't know how to sit. I was in so much pain because of all this being compressed. It felt like someone just pulls because everything, we need movements. Everything just felt like it's being pulled in. You just want to sit like this, and you're just like with the scoliosis from everything. I was just like, in so much pain. I was also on muscle relaxers and pain medication. I have never taken an antidepressant in my whole life. So I'm really proud because I got through everything just looking at it eventually. But I was sitting on the plane, and I was thinking to myself, I had that thought come into my head, what I shared with you yesterday. I'm like, wow, if the plane just crashes now, all the pain will be over. Wouldn't that be great? And then I caught that thought, and I'm like, wow. Because I'm a person that always enjoyed life, but I was in so much pain. I also remember that was around the time, like I said, because everything was just stuck in my body. I would get up in the morning, so I wouldn't get much rest from sleeping. So I was in pain sleeping because I couldn't lay on either side. I couldn't breathe because of scoliosis. Wow. And if I would get up and sit at the dining table in the morning, like on a weekend, I would sit at the dining table. It's also interesting to think about it now because you know how you can forget pain. It's probably just like giving birth. Eventually, you're going to have a second child because you forget how much it hurts or whatever. I mean,
you get used to the pain, yeah.
I've never given birth, so I had some other pain. I would be sitting at the dining table and just crying because I was in so much pain. So then now I can even feel that. So then on the plane, I had that thought. So I got
literally wishing for you don't know what else to do, so you're wishing for it. So it's getting really dark.
Yes, I never contemplated suicide because I didn't want to die. But that thought, as I'm sitting in the plane, so uncomfortable. Of course, also the pressure changes, when you're on a plane. It was just terrible. I think I survived that was 2004. I survived the 2 weeks of vacation by just, popping my muscle relaxers and drinking red wine. Because eventually your muscle that's the whole
coping mechanisms. Yeah. Same.
Because you need more, but it's also the liver not detoxing your body.
Yeah, you're adding.
You have more pain. And that's what people don't understand when they're addicted to pain medication. It's like it's your liver, it's your system can't detox it.
You're adding and you're masking and you're adding and you're masking. So when did you start to have some light? When was there a turning point for you?
Right. So then get back home, and I can't. Oh, so I looked at that. Now I do not remember the right chronological order, if what came first. There were two events. The one was I got up in the morning, must have been on a weekend, or maybe on those days when I couldn't go to work, like which was usually Thursday, Friday, because like I said, I could handle 3 days and then nothing, complete burnout. I looked into the mirror in my, condo in Germany, and I saw this sick. I mean, I just looked at my face. Like I was super skinny. I mean, I'm still slender, but I was like I was so sick because I couldn't eat anything. I was just in pain, so sick. There's bags under my eyes, and also like just when you look at someone who's so like who's lost their vitality, like train wreck. I looked at myself and I'm like, who is this? I don't want to die. And then here comes the thing. Then I started negotiating. I started praying. The person that came back from Nigeria in 94, and it's like, so 10 years later, I'm like, I started praying and I started negotiating. I'm like, if I'm not gonna die, I'm gonna do anything you want from me. That's what got me into this work, into trouble. Anyway, so I'm like negotiating, like, I just don't want, because I don't want to die. I'm a person, I enjoy life. And even if I'm just sitting on the couch in my cave, that's still joy to me. Anyway, so that same year, so it was after the vacation, and that same year, I also had a lucid dream. I didn't know it was lucid. In that dream, the dream felt real, it felt visceral. And it took me into this space where I'm like, I didn't have the lift under my leg anymore. I didn't have any pain. And I was so excited in my dream that when I woke up, so I took it into this waking state, I was so excited. So when I woke up, I'm like, wow. So I'm laying there in bed, I'm like, wow, I don't have the lift anymore. Let me get up. So I get up, boink. Because it was just a dream.
Right.
Because I always needed something because
it was like a vision.
Years, like the discrepancy. So I'm like, so then I was probably crying. I don't know. I always cry to myself. I wouldn't really cry in front of people. That changed when I became a therapist. Because now I'm like,
you swallowed the
tears. Yeah. So as a therapist, I'm like, sit down. Like if I don't have a session where I'm not crying, I didn't have a good session. Anyway.
Same here. Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's interesting. So pause for a second. So what I'm hearing from you is remarkable. So like me, so then you had this like conscious choice, and it was almost like a reconnection with God, source, your faith.
Yes.
And then you negotiate. It's funny because that's the first thing I did too. Like, if you do this for me, I'll do anything you want. And then be careful what you wish for. So, exactly. So what happened? What did you wish for and what did you get? So what happened after that?
I didn't know what I wished for. So I just wished for that I didn't want to die. I still didn't have a clue. And then a couple of months later, I met, that was a big thing. I had always been in physical therapy and in rehab. Everybody was just like, this is for another episode. It's for like a book where I really write like the way doctors and therapists talk to you, shame you, and not even looking at what's really happening. Like, oh, why are you breathing that way?
You're talking now traditional. You're talking, sorry to interrupt. Yes, you're talking traditional medicine. You're not talking holistic.
No,
you're talking
traditional.
I'm not gonna call Western medicine, more of allopathic medicine.
Yes, allopathic medicine. And when they don't know what to do, it's like, oh, you have to go and see a psychiatrist. I'm like, no. That was the thing. I never really went to see a psychiatrist because I always opposed it. I'm like, no, there must be, maybe it would have helped me, but it wasn't my path because I was, anyway.
Well, the mind, real quick, because I know we talked about this a few months ago, and this is in our philosophies. The mind interprets the soul. It's really about the soul and the body. And if you only focus on the mind, you're missing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my physical therapist, and I didn't make any progress because now you're burned out, you're completely compressed from a manual osteopathic standpoint, which PTs, unless they have the training or
physical therapists,
they don't understand it. And that's what I see. We can talk about it later.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to strengthen your muscles. I couldn't move anything. So then my physical therapist went on vacation and I got scheduled with the owner of the rehabilitation place. And he is how in Germany, he's a manual osteopath. So not to mistake it with an osteopathic physician. That's an American thing, the DO. We also have DOs in Germany, but we have a lot of osteopaths who are manual osteopathic practitioners. And he was the one who would only see the complex cases. So he would see cerebral palsy kids and that. So
Wow.
I went to see him, and wow, that was the big thing. It's like that's when I, started studying this work, because I was so sick. He couldn't do any visceral manipulation. He couldn't, just looking at my large intestine and my hip, this whole pelvis, he could just lay the finger there. And I was already out the ceiling from the pain I was in. So he gently treated a lot of, very gentle visceral work. He also was the first person who said that lift is the problem. But we didn't know. I mean, how do you get rid of a 3-centimeter lift?
Right.
That
And so he's
because my
pointing
whole
out.
shape was, I mean, I didn't look that twisted. I was just internally twisted and rotated. So
Well, go slow. So he points out that
yes,
then you're, again, what I'm seeing is you're masking, you're putting stuff on top of
yes,
stuff, and you're not getting to the core symptom, the core
yes,
the core energy of it, so to
yes.
speak. That's
So
interesting.
then through him, he referred me to a woman who used to be a dental assistant who works with toxicity. So she worked with, because she got sick herself from mercury fillings and all that stuff. So we worked on my amalgam fillings, have those taken out, detoxing, and did a lot of like Dr. Klinghardt detoxing, but still, I was still, always sick. And the interesting thing is, the woman, when I met her, her birthday, not the same year, but her birthday was like my birthday. And then
What
she
year
said,
is this now?
that was
What
still
year?
2004, end of
Four?
this, must have been December 2004. And she had like 3 more female clients, all born on that day. And I go, there must be something really weird about that day. So we were all very sensitive creatures. And then through her, in 2005, so it was early 2005, in March, I met this family doctor. I went to see him, and like I said to you, that was the day that I later found out my dog that I still have. She's 15 years, 15 and a half. She was born on that day that I met my doctor, who put me on sick leave. He put me on sick leave because he saw that how sick I was, and finding someone who understood. He's also, he used to work with allergies, food sensitivities, and holistic kind of, like, he also worked with people who, he was a very kind soul. He had a lot of people who were trying to get off of drugs, like heroin addicts, like giving them whatever they get, whatever. And he would be on sick leave, and I asked him, how long do you think this is going to last? He's like, this is going to be a long time. So I'm like, oh, I can get a dog, because I always wanted to have a puppy, but I never had the time because I always worked. So I'm like, I know it was, because finally someone saw me how sick I really was.
And that's what you did for me, right? I mean, and that is huge, because you make the choice, and then all of a sudden, the divine hand, providence, boom, you meet a pivotal person in your life. And I like what you said, because it was like our first session. It was simple, because all you did is you put your hands under my hips, and so profound for me, as some of my sessions with you have been. And if we have time on this episode, and we may have to bring you back, some of the stuff you've seen on the tape when I've been on your proverbial table. So, okay, so you then go into this craft. So what happens next in terms of being able to also get to the other stuff we want to talk about?
You know what? I have like a blank spot in my head now, because I can't remember what I did between 2005 and 2007. I know I was on sick leave until late 2006.
No worries. So what happened in 2007 for you? Because you said that.
In 2006, I went back to work because they were constantly bothering me, because I used to do things that nobody else knew. So I would go back to work 3 hours a day, I think, or 2.5 hours a day. That's the only thing I could do. And then I was burned out again. But at least they had me for 2.5 hours.
So that's the thing. So that's another important factor here, since this is what I'm doing is the business healing component. And I like that you bring this up, and I forgot to mention it earlier, because this is the culture, right? And this isn't only in the US, this is the employer, the organizational culture that we are dealing with currently does not have the awareness or the sensitivity to say, look, while we need productivity, we need to also make sure we don't kill our employees. Now, I know yours were latent symptoms like mine. So,
but for me, it was also, I should have quit that job in 2004.
I like that ownership, that personal responsibility. I like that.
Because that's what I learned.
Yeah.
But I didn't, because I was afraid. So
wait, go slow. What do you mean by afraid? So this is important in terms of, well, what would elaborate, because this is good for the audience, because I'm sure
that's what I'm saying. This is for everybody. So when I tell people, oh yeah, I just got through it, but I also tell my clients, I'm like, you know what? I was so scared, and just thinking about it, I still don't know really how I did it. I was so scared, but I also lost everything. I lost my condo. I lost everything. I came again. But I was scared because I had always been in that job. It wasn't even the right job for me, but it was just the conditioning of my
It's what
parents.
you knew.
But also the conditioning by my parents, not supporting me in what I really wanted to
I
do.
love that. Oh, yeah.
Completely conditioned. And then you're just good at what you're doing. You just do it. But I didn't enjoy it because I was always doing fine, somewhat fine. And I would walk into the building, I would be sick. But of course, I had everybody else's symptoms, which I didn't know. So, and being on sick leave was kind of like giving me the time to recover. I had my puppy, and I still sometimes walked. And the way, you know what, I would just get myself down to my car. My car was my best friend because I didn't have to walk then, because I had to live.
You didn't have to endure the pain. Yeah.
Exactly. So much pain. And also then I had private medical insurance. So it's like the best thing. You get the best doctors. They did it. Yeah, we have to do hip surgery. And I'm like, but there was always that thing, that fight. My spirit knew, even though I didn't really know what else to do, my spirit knew, no, you do not need a hip surgery. Your whole body is aching, right? That was my thing. It's not just the hip that is aching. So I always opposed it, but I just didn't know what to do. Another thing that is also important, that I find very significant, that people should hear. When I was 6 years old, my parents took, because I had to go to the orthopedic doctor every year, they would measure my leg. They never looked at the rotation or whatever. I mean, both legs are different. They're really funny, but in the end, they balance themselves out these days. So the university clinic in Düsseldorf, they wanted to do a surgery, like cutting through my tibia and fibula and putting screws in there and extending my right leg by 3 centimeters. So they would have put a thing around it, and then
That'll fix it.
1 millimeter a day. So by 3 centimeters, it would have been 30 days.
What the fuck?
Yes. And then my parents were already like, my mother's very skittish anyway. So, and the professor, so the younger doctors, of course they want to experiment on that kid. That's the whole thing. It's like, for me, medicine often is just, it's like medieval torture in the new century. So the professor told my parents, he said, you know what? If your kid is enjoying, or the things your kid cannot do while going through the surgery and in the recovery, she won't be able to ride her bicycle, roller skates, and little. So your kid is happy. She's doing all those things, because I did everything. I just had this little limp and this thing under my leg. I mean, so he said to my parents, if you're not ashamed of having a kid that has a disability, the pronunciation is also like ashamed, because a lot of time parents do something to make the kids just fit in. And he said to them, if you are not ashamed of it, if you have no problem with it, do not do that surgery. And hallelujah, thank God my parents did not do that surgery. I could have never well, that's the story again, how it comes to my change. I would have never been able to change it. And who knows what else would have happened. So that was a big thing. So anyway, so then in 2000, how did we get to this?
Was this 2007? I think you mentioned 2007 as
far
as
and also being afraid of changing, the job, because the comfort, but I also had no support. I mean, there's no financial support. Like in Germany, it's not everybody has a lot of money. My parents had normal money for Germans, but there was nothing to support me if I would have been sick. I had a disability insurance, thank goodness, because already when I was, must have been around 2000 when I started falling apart. I'm like, okay, I do not know what's going to happen, but this is not good. So I always have a foresight for myself. Like I have that, I don't need a psychic to tell me anything. I'm like, I kind of like, have I follow my instincts. So I had good insurance that covered all those things also later in life when I was sick. So they really helped me. But still I was scared. Oh boy, and things just went downhill. The more I got, scared, and because spirit wanted me to change, or God, I mean, I had to fulfill my contract, which of course, I did my negotiation, and then I'm like,
what you came here for, in a sense. For those that are listening, so go slow.
Right.
For those that are listening, in a sense, that you're saying that at this point, you're on your turning point, and so for you, I like what you're covering. This is good, because I was gonna say it, and you said it perfectly. It's like you took the words out of my mouth, and I love it. Is this notion of you kept that faith, you kept going while maintaining some practical foresight.
Yes.
You also took, it sounds like you took leaps of faith. You jumped and you said, let me keep going.
Yes. So then in 2007, it must have been in early spring 2007. Now here comes the big thing. 2007, my mother said to me, so my parents, they're in a big community of like, in Germany, you have like your garden, your allotment, your garden house. It's not by your apartment or by your house, it's somewhere else. And it's like a garden club, and you have like, you party, and you have like whatever Thanksgiving
It's a community.
the whole community. Yeah. And so they had friends who were originally from Russia. So after the Iron Curtain fell, and the reunification of when Germany, East and West unified, a lot of people who had German ancestors who lived in Russia after the Second World War, they would come to Germany and live there, because now they got a German passport. Hey, you were Germans, you just had to leave after the Second World War, here, come back. So friends of my parents, the woman said to my mother, so how is Tanja doing? Because everybody knew that I was sick, but not really like, what's going on? So my mother said to her, yeah, she's not really doing good. She's doing better than when she was working full time, but she's still not doing good. So the woman, I said to my mother, in the summer, there's a healer coming from Kyrgyzstan. Let me know if your daughter wants to go and see her. So my mother comes to me and she says, you know what Ida said? There's and bless Ida's soul, because she passed last year, I think, from cancer. So this woman, but anyway.
She was an angel in disguise.
Yes, exactly. She has always been, but no self-care, no boundaries. Then you get sick from other things. So my mother said to me, look, there's this healer coming from Kyrgyzstan. You want to go and see her? And I'm like, sure. She's not going to cut me. She's not going to medicate me. I'm going to go and see her. It's like, what do I have to lose? That's also what I say. When people sometimes overthink things or overthink coming to see me, it's like, listen, I don't medicate you. I'm not going to cut you. I'm not going to hurt you.
What's the risk?
You're not getting anything out of it, but you know what? So I was waiting, and now I get a little bit of this is a good thing. This is a big thing. So July, I was just thinking about that yesterday. So what was the first day I met her? Must have been July 14th, 2007. So this woman would come from Kyrgyzstan. She's very famous in Russia. She just never wants to get on TV, or she treats even politicians, but and that's kind of where I'm like, I don't want anybody to see me. Let me just do my work, that kind of thing, right?
Similar to how you used to be before this show.
Before this show, right? I'm like, so let me just do my thing. It's like no attention.
Divine synchronicity, ladies and gentlemen. You're seeing Tanja talk about what's happening for her live.
And she worked out of the garden house of this friend of my parents. So on that Saturday, whatever, everybody had to come on that Saturday. So she would not treat on the Saturday, but she would do kind of like an evaluation. So I arrived there. Oh my God, there were so many people, like probably everybody from Russia who knows her, who now lived in Germany, and everybody else who heard of this woman. It was like packed, all those people that are trying to see this woman. So I go in, I lay down, the woman, and then of course, I don't speak Russian. She doesn't speak German or anything. So the translator, my parents' friend, was translating. She put her hands on my leg, and then she would just give me a full reading. Okay, when you were a baby, you hit your head, which is true because my father accidentally, hit my head. When you were this happened. But she did not mention my lift. She did not talk about the lift. And I'm like, she talked about everything else. And then she said, because you're so sick, I'm going to make an exception. I'm going to treat you right now. I was the only person she's ever treated on the day because I was so sick. She saw how sick so she treated me that day.
It's kind of what you did for me. You're like, you're so messed up. Somebody's got to do something.
Right. So she treated me right away. And then I had to come back 7 times, which was a lot because usually people just come back for once or twice or maybe 3 times. You only pay her like €20. It's like $25.
Wow.
And
God bless her.
I had to come in 7 days. That evening, so that Saturday evening, I drove home. I felt like someone had taken a helmet off my head. I called my girlfriend. I'm like, Phyllis, I'm feeling so great. Let's go out. Let's go to Düsseldorf. Because that's another thing, I was single, just by myself. How old was I in 2007? 36. I wanted to go out, but I couldn't because I was so sick. It's like if you always
started to feel good for the first time after.
Right. So he treated me right away, and I called my friend. I'm like, Phyllis, we have to go out. So we went out that Saturday evening, and then I was booked. I must have been on sick leave still back then because I saw her every day. So I went to see her in the following Monday. That was the 16th. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. She would treat me every day. So how she treats is she would put her hand on whatever part of your body, kind of like, she doesn't have the medical she doesn't have an osteopathic or like a craniosacral.
Well, it's like, I guess you talk
but
for
she's
me.
so intuitive. She also used to say, instead of talking about my lift, she would say, she said, your liver is too high. So my liver was
positioned high.
That was her thing, why I was so sick, because my liver was too high and shoved up into my diaphragm and ribcage.
Well, this is interesting. Go slow, because this is what I was going to say. This is from my interpretation, from an untrained observer, because you're now trained in this craft.
Yeah.
This is what you did for me. For people that are listening, it's as simple as you putting your hand on my body and then listening, from my interpretation, what you used to explain to me when I first came to you, to my body intelligence, to my what my body wanted. And it's funny. So you had your liver up. Remember, you were telling me my spleen and pancreas went up. So it's funny. You really are my soul sister the more I listen to you.
So, but then she said that in Russian, and then the translator would translate it. But while she treated, and it was interesting because I can see myself as I'm getting better at my craft. Because I was always wondering, she treated me and she would say a prayer. So she prayed in Russian, whatever she said, but it always sounded like a repetitive thing. And you see, it doesn't really matter if we understand it, because that part of us that wants to understand it is just mind. It doesn't matter. So she was,
and it worked. No matter whether you thought or understood it, it worked.
Exactly. And then comes Friday, and that's like the kicker. And it was also a special date. And I have that tattooed on my back. It's like numerology. It's like, so it was, in Europe, we say the day first, so day, month, and then the year. So it was 2007, 2007. So 2007, 2007. I had my fifth, the session, and she starts treating me. My dog, Belinda, she's in the room with me. She was always in the room with me. It's like, she's like the witness that's still alive. And then she said to the translator, oh, bring the mother in. Now, with my training, I understand, of course, because I had my disability. I grew like this inside my mother. It's big ancestral component. So my mother had to come in. And then the woman said to me, and that's the thing, I have to literally like quote it now. So the translator said, the Holy Spirit says you need to take the lift off of your shoe. And I'm like, the Holy what? I had no clue. I mean, like I said, I grew up Catholic, but what did I know? So this woman tells me she's going to treat me now, and the Holy Spirit wants me to take the lift off of my shoe. And here's Tanja, German brain, left brain. I'm like, what? Yeah, exactly. That's how I'm feeling.
I know. I move.
It's like,
that I still adjust a little bit.
Whoosh, because the Holy Spirit is here. It's like, wow. Because that's what she worked with. She always worked with the Trinity. Jesus, Holy Spirit. Because obviously she also had her event where she almost died, and then that saved her. So she changed actually from being, she used to be, I think, Muslim. She changed into Christian, whatever. She did some religious change. You know how in Kyrgyzstan, close to China, whatever. So she said that, and I'm like, but you know what? I'm like, whatever. I mean, again, I have nothing to do, so whatever. I don't see the Holy Spirit, but okay. So she treated me with hands laying on and whatever. She pushed in my back, and she treated my spine and whatever, who knows. And afterwards, I'm like, oh my goodness. So I took I can feel my leg now. So I took the lift off, and I'm like, and I look at my mother, and my mother's like, oh, here. So my mother gave me like 100 euros. She's like, go and buy some shoes. Because I'm like, how am I going to walk now? Oh, no, that was my thing. Exactly, the Holy Who. And then I'm like, no. So I said, before she even dreamed me, I'm like, no, I have no shoes to wear. And you see how conditioned I was? I mean, also as the listener now, I was so conditioned with Tanja has a short leg. Tanja has a lift under her shoe. So when she said the Holy Spirit says, take the lift off under your shoe, I'm like, the Holy Who? What? I have no shoes to wear. No, I don't have any shoes, because all my shoes have lifts under them.
You were so attached to your identity that you didn't want to allow the miracle in a sense.
It didn't make any sense. And that's also when people come to me, they're like, I have scoliosis, but I guess I can't do anything about it. I'm like, let me tell you a story. I usually don't tell them the story, but it's like, because I was
now they get to hear it. Now some of your clients are going to hear this, and they'll make more sense.
It's not like I was a kid, where everything is still more flexible. I was 36. So my mother gave me money, and I was in this, I think I felt then, after the session, I felt the way I felt in that dream back then, when I felt like
the lucid dream, yeah.
So I drove to the store, I bought shoes. I'm like, oh, this is fucking unbelievable. It's like I bought shoes. I drove back home, and then there was like thunder, lightning, the worst, weather, everything was just coming to an end. I just went to bed. I just slept. I woke up Saturday morning. Like, what just happened? Oh my God, I was in so much pain. I was in pain before, obviously. I was in so much pain. But now taking that lift off, so my body grew into this left rotation, human suffering, death. Now it had to come into the right, into spirit, God, and healing. And I'm like, what the heck? So I thought I was passing out again, my MO. But whatever she installed with my spirit, I did never, ever go back to put a shoe with a lift under my leg. And I think that was the day. So that Saturday, that's when I tossed all my shoes except for the one that I just showed you. I tossed them all because I didn't want to go back to wearing them. These days I regret it, especially like the horrible sneakers with the thick thing. I'm like, I should have just kept them. But back then I was like, no, I have to toss it all. It has to get all out. I just kept this one pair.
This is interesting, right? Because we talk about this natural process of like death and rebirth and the alchemy of it. So what I'm hearing from you is I didn't do it this willingly. I like how you did it. You surrendered completely. So you actually, from what I'm hearing, is you allowed the detached from this old identity construct.
Yes.
And you said, you forget it. I'm not that person. Let that person go die, as it were.
Yes.
So that the new Tanja, and you never look back. Did you? Did you ever look back after that? As far as like this new, I don't need those shoes. In other words,
I just tossed them all. And then on that Sunday, so that was Friday, Saturday, I tossed all the shoes. Sunday, I drove to my pet. Oh my God, I was in so much pain. I mean, it's like, yeah.
And that's, let me pause you on this too.
It's like you structurally, you can't imagine only if you had something like that.
Right. Well, let me pause you because that's interesting. Sorry to keep interrupting. So I had it too, and I think I see it, and maybe you can clarify this for the audience too. It's like a computer system. It's garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yes.
So you're healing at a multi-dimensional level. You're doing all this soul stuff, all this energetic stuff that's housed in your body, and it got worse, like it did for me before it got better. I was crying when I first.
Well, but also just structure. I mean, that's even just structurally talking. Everybody who is a body worker, therapist would say like, oh yeah, I mean, it's just,
it's the way it is.
Because of 36 years. And then now you take that off. It's like my body grew and adjusted. It's not like I was walking around like, I looked straight from me. I was just internally,
right,
with and everything. So that's fixed. That's in the fascia. And then the scar on top of it that held everything up. It just didn't really. So
that's interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong. Then there's this notion of then your body will naturally heal itself. You had to allow it.
No, that sounds too easy.
I know it's oversimplifying it.
Yes.
I know as a practitioner, you're like, Hass, don't say that to the audience.
Yeah, that's like, no, it's not. It was, So 2007, that's like the last 13 years. And I'm still working on it, but now it's just fine tuning. But on that Sunday, I went to my parents and I'm like, you have to call her. I'm dying because I was in so much pain. So my mother called. And then they're like, no, she doesn't work on Sundays because God doesn't work on Sundays. That's how I am these days. If someone asks me, can you come in pain? No, I don't work on Sundays. She was my teacher.
So I like this.
So I'm like, but then like half an hour later, they called us back. They're like, how's Tanja feeling now? I'm like, oh, I'm feeling better. Oh yeah, she just prayed for you. I'm like, oh, what the heck?
So for the sake of time, so you said this beautifully, that you went into deeper, you learned your craft. So we could transition to more of like sharing some tips for the audience. What was the last piece for you? Because you said I worked on it for 14 years. So if you can fast forward for the sake of time, what was this last piece in terms of how I think it relates to my sibling in a sense, right?
Well, yeah, but I have to still say, so since that happened, because when I started swimming, I just need to share one story because the people need to hear it.
Sure.
In case they encounter a doctor who says something to them. I went to a different orthopedic doctor because I thought, okay, if I go there, I didn't tell him what happened. I mean, you can't tell anybody, right? So it's like
some lady prayed on me and called in the
Holy Spirit
touched me.
No, so
I'm healed.
Yes, and I knew that I needed help, physical therapy, and in Germany you get it prescribed. I mean, I had, so need the prescription, all that stuff. So I went to this doctor. And I'm like, okay, this is my history, but I would really like to try reversing all of this. I don't want to wear the lift anymore. Just kept it simple. Like I feel like it's time to, change it. I didn't say anything of what had happened to me. So this doctor looks at me and he says, and I was also still very skinny and I looked very sick, right? He said to me, you know what? I think you should just go home, put that lift bag under your leg, and go and see a psychiatrist.
Imagine what he would have said if you had said the lady healed you that way.
I didn't.
Definitely need to see a psychiatrist.
And then with this arrogance, and that's what I hear, the stories that I hear from my clients and also from people, like they experienced this arrogance. And then with this arrogance, he said to me, and you probably did not expect to hear this from me. And I'm like, you know what? I don't really care. Bye. I didn't do it. I did it because I didn't care, because I had experienced something so big. I didn't really care. So then again, I didn't have physical therapy or anything. I started swimming. The first time I went swimming, I could only swim one lap. So exhausted. That's how exhausted I was. I think 2 years later, by the time I came to the US, I could swim like 50 laps. But it took a time, and it took also probably 4 months. I was running after my dog, which is also significant because we were, walking my dog with my mother. I was running. So it must have been October, November. So in July, that thing happened. I had done my own work. I was running. I turned around and I said to my mother, and that's like a big thing because here I am an adult, but it's like a kid. I'm like, oh my God, I can run without having pain. Of course, I still had pain, but from my level, it was like no pain. And then things changed. So then I got into, the manual osteopathic things like visceral, craniosacral. I studied everything. Because to always heal a part within me. And then, things got better. But in 2016, I got so frustrated. And frustration is always it's very good for me. I mean, not anger that.
Well, I like this. You embrace the emotions, all of them, the full spectrum of them.
But the frustration that makes me go and look, get rid of that doesn't work, and look for something new. And usually then the new comes. So if you just use the frustration as an engine to shoot you forward instead of like pity party, I love
that. Let's rephrase that. Let's restate that because that's beautifully worded. I love that. That's alchemy at its finest. So you use the frustration as fuel to drive you forward. So you use the emotion to transform you. Beautiful.
Yes. I don't sit. I mean, obviously, I have all kind of emotions, and I can really go deep into an emotion and then just feel very deeply. But anyway, so 2016, I had taken almost all classes possible. I got really frustrated at an advanced 2 craniosacral class, so frustrated because I didn't have my needs met. Instead of them saying, or the instructor saying, this is beyond my scope, I was shamed. So my at this point, in my own sessions, I would die different death on the table. So
slow down for the audience. So elaborate on that. What do you mean? So like psycho-spiritually,
yes,
felt like you were dying when you were going through treatments.
When I go through treatments. So when I would be on the table, and usually what you do is like looking for that spot in your body. That's just like, you go to that area that
what you do for me. Yeah.
Yes, but what I do with everybody. And anytime you would find, they would arc, it doesn't matter what workshop I was in, or even if it was a personal session, we call it arcing. It's like finding that spot. They would start treating it, and it would take me down because I can go into that state, after years of doing things. It's like it's not even theta, because theta feels different, when I had.
You're talking about brain states now.
It's a different state where you feel, I don't know how to explain, you feel the restriction in your body, you see the story, what happened. You can't get into your brain because you cannot analyze it. You literally have to say what is happening. So sometimes, it's like I even have to say horrible things, but it's not about censoring it, because it's not that part.
I call it calling it out.
It is that part that has a memory, ancestral, past, like who knows what. So anytime someone would arc into me and I would have a session, especially in those advanced classes, like multi-hands, I would just die a different death. I mean, I actually journaled them all. We can make a TV show out of it. It's like, but then dying that death will release a part of my restriction. So it will release a physical restriction. But eventually I just got so frustrated in this workshop. I also, and I'm like, that's my thing. It's like I'm constantly experiencing those deaths, and I'm constantly channeling, because at this point, 2016, I mean, even before, but then so much more. It's like, I would just walk by someone and my body would just take on the form of that person, and it was just constantly on. It was never like now I can turn it on and off.
Well,
with
go
the help
slow. Go
of, with
slow.
the help of one of the Sadeghis.
Go slow for a second, because this is good. There's two things I want to unpack for the audience, because again, some people may be new to this information.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is arcing. So you get into a different, as a practitioner, you get into a different brain state.
No. Arcing is just.
I forget the terminology for the sake of the listener. So you get into a different brain state. I'm going to keep it high level. Different brain state, and then you feel into their body intelligence, and then you simply, bypassing logic, you simply say, what is the body housing that needs to be released or open? I know I'm oversimplifying, Tanya.
No. You know, you're putting it into the spiritual, but I want to keep it in the physical.
So how would you?
Also, fascial people, you know, you feel
Good.
for a fascial restriction. That would be arcing, like which leg moves. So that's physical.
Okay.
But then for me, as a person, if I am getting treated, so they will arc into the physical restriction.
Okay.
Find where's the physical restriction. But then, of course, every physical restriction has a psychosomatic or psychospiritual component.
Right.
I would say in everybody, but not everybody has the veil so thin. So for
Right.
me, I would just spin into a story. I will observe the story like I'm watching TV. That's why I hardly ever watch movies. Sorry, I've never watched any Marvel movies or anything superheroes. I don't know anything about that because I have those things on my treatment table when I get treated. Seeing it, acknowledging it, and then it will release something of my physical restrictions. Those things would also that's more like the somato-emotional release, you know, somatic experiencing, because you have emotions stored in the body, and then whatever the story is behind it can be very different. It's different. Some people, you know, if you have emotional trauma, if you have been abused, it's stored in your body. It's different than whatever. Everybody's individual. But so, and then of course me constantly channeling. So, you know, I said that, and then it was almost like ridiculous. Yeah, channeling is like a new age thing. I'm like, no, I'm not sitting there channeling for someone. I am living life constantly channeling. There's no stop. So obviously, I got so frustrated. They should have just said, you know what, this is beyond our scope. But then, of course, you know, Tanja Seagraves, you just try to dialogue about everything. It's like, okay, I had it. And then there was this lady when I'm working with your sister-in-law, and she told me about her sister who was sick, and now that your brother treated her and she's cured from her cancer, she looks even better than she looked before she had cancer. And I happened to see that woman, and I saw this glowing, healthy-looking woman, like a beacon of light. I'm like, wow. So I'm like, okay, I went over to the Beehive. I made an appointment.
And that's when you kind of entered the
That's 2017. And that was then, you know, that's because I needed that frustration. I was frustrated with, some people might enjoy it, like having, I'm getting on the table, I'm going to die again. Because it's like, really, there must be something else behind that. It's like, you know, you don't want to constantly, it's just like you're spinning, but you get no resolution.
You want to find that closure once and for all, and that's kind of what.
Yeah, and I want to feel good, because obviously, ever since that event 2007 and then reversing everything, I always started feeling better. There was always improvement, but also sometimes it was a setback. Like healing or having something changed can be very painful and very uncomfortable, but afterwards you feel better. So yeah, so that's when I started seeing him, and I don't die anymore.
So
also not in my sleep or in my nap time.
So this is profound, right? And this is good that we took this time to unpack it. And I want to shift gears to, because it sounds like, you know, this is how it shaped you and what you do. So what I'm hearing from you, and it's really remarkable, because it's, you know, like I said to the audience, and what I've experienced with you is, what do we do when we've been living with all of this chronic pain? We don't know about it. We're numb to it. We're disassociated. We're armored. So you've healed all that, and it was a long and arduous journey. So what tips do you have for people to transform their pain? And in terms of what you do, or from your experience, I know you've given a lot already throughout this. There's so much we've peppered in. If you were to kind of hone in, what else is there for you to share?
I feel one of the things that's very important is, the thing that is keeping us from healing ourselves is fear. Fear. Also the fear of pain and discomfort. And you know what? And I was like this also. Even when I was already a therapist, I was working. And then in my personal life, if something would come up as in like aching, it would almost throw me into a depression because I was so afraid, because I had, as a chronic pain patient, and I know that with some of my patients, they are so afraid when that comes back up. It's like, it's like your nervous system just, it's like, oh, I'm gonna get sick again. So it is horrific. So
like you anticipate it, like you're clenching before it's actually happened.
well, it also comes because if you change one area, and I don't know, you probably also explained that you change one thing. I mean, there probably would be a whole different episode, like talking about the, I don't want to say, well, the
bonus episode
that I experienced over the last 3 years. I guess not everybody would have done that, but it's like trust. It's really like this faith. So once, and that's what this woman really installed in me in 2007. You know, there was like, because in the end, our primal fear is fear of death, right? We're all afraid to die. Me, I don't want to die. So it's that fear of death. But once we understand that life can be so, I mean, it's so beautiful. Like, look at this, 49. I have like, I've never felt that good. It's almost like Trump now after his corona treatment. He's like, he's never felt better than 20 years. I'm like, I feel so good. And if a little thing, so if we start healing and cleansing out the conditioning, then it becomes more precise. And there's this one thing that comes up, and then you can address that one thing instead of just being full. So I think when we are sick, we are just full. There are so many components. And doctors, like I said, allopathic medicine, they treat symptom after symptom after symptom. And then you're losing, you don't see the trees in the, how you say, you don't see the trees in the forest, however you say that. And it's terrible, but as you clean out more and more, so if I get a slight headache or like in a city, I'm in a funk, I know I have to address this. And it's only one thing that's putting me into this funk. So I can address this one thing, and then I feel good again until I grab the next book or whatever, and then the next psychospiritual stuff comes up.
Until the next thing that comes up to look at.
Exactly. The next, and it's, everything is transformative and healing.
Well, it's allowing that, because so like that's something that I think we've talked about before too, right? Is that you have to be open, right? So you talked about it beautifully in terms of fear, not having that fear, restoring the faith, and like, so what do you sense? So if the people are listening to this, and I love how you said it right now too, very beautifully worded, is take it a step at a time, is how I hear it, right? Mm-hmm. Is like one symptom at a time. So what else can you share, either as a practitioner or from your own personal experience, either way, because I sense they're really the same.
Yeah, it's also trust.
Okay, what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate?
Trusting the process and trusting yourself. And also trusting that it will get better eventually. But you know what, another thing, you also have to make changes. I mean, it is what it is. It's like you cannot do the same, and that's nothing new. You can't do the same thing over and over and expect something new. So
let me ask you. So like, because you're similar to me, you're a genius as well. So how did you deal with your mind along the way, right? Because that,
oh my goodness,
that was the biggest challenge for me. Yeah, that was the biggest challenge for me. So without taking too much time, if you were to give like sound bites, or like, you know, I guess as tips, because that was for me, and a lot of people I know you work with, I work with, it's like the mind, especially if you're smart, gets in the way. So how did you deal with that, or any tips you have for people listening in terms of doing the work?
Right, because the mind, and you know what, I still have it to this day, and I can then laugh about it, because if I have a experience, I call it the Tanja, the German mind, that's looking at it as like, you can't even tell anybody about this because this is completely crazy. But it's also our society, because you know, our society is like science, you have to prove anything. For me, science, and sorry if I you know, insult anybody, but it's not even insulting, it's just the truth. To me, science is, by the time science proves something, it's already obsolete.
Yeah.
And because I'm always in the, you know, what is the next thing, what is the new thing, and that's why I go through training, and you know, I find the latest, you know, amazing thing that helps me. Oh my god, when I found that osteoduce, it's like, I was putting on those shoes yesterday, like ankle boots that I had for 2 or 3 years, and I always felt uncomfortable walking in them. I put them on yesterday, I'm like, wow, they're so comfy. But you know what, I've treated my foot and my ankle intensively, just like with Labor Day, when I was still throwing up from just treating it with not touching it. And I was like, oh, wow, those shoes are very comfy. They weren't comfy when I bought them. I'm like, oh, why did I buy them? It's like, it feels like a clops at my foot because obviously my feet are very sensitive, but
Well, and you're still allowing for more healing and more growth as
yeah,
advanced as you are. You're still like that innovation and that thought leadership. We share that equally. So you mentioned to me once, a while back that and this is probably one of the another seeds that you planted is that like we've talked about this unconditioning. You've also helped me understand individuation. So what does that mean for you to kind
yeah,
of like bring this down to the home stretch?
yeah. So that was even 6 years ago. Anytime I would go to a training class, obviously the instructor, doesn't matter if it was Baral, Upledger, whatever training, they will teach it a certain way, and I will be sitting there and like, I can listen to the anatomy, then I have to treat the body, and it's like I have to do what the lecture is of this moment, and then the body is just like, no, here. It's just like yesterday, I went to my hairdresser, the dog comes over, sits down, I have to touch one spot, the dog has a thing going through its leg, it released the limb, and then the dog walks off. It's like, I can't help it. It's like they just come to me. So in the classes, I'm like, and I would just go home and I have to make it my own practice. But then I had a session for myself, was a biodynamic craniosacral session or whatever. And what I took from it was like, 6 years ago. I'm 6 years into it. You have to forgive them. So forgiving, those doctors who did that with the leg or whatever. And then all those doctors, you need to forgive them. So I'm driving home on the 101, crying, angry, which is always good. Like I said, it's fuel. It fuels, So I'm driving, crying. Come home, I'm like, and Derek goes like, what happened? I'm like, I do not want to forgive anybody. I want to be angry. And then I just allowed myself to be angry. That's another thing. It's like, of course, we have to forgive. And I mean, I can talk about all those things, and I have not even forgiven it, just also accepting. But back then I couldn't. And then I was also so frustrated because it's like everybody always wants you to do it a certain way. And then usually when I get frustrated, I dig through my library and things. So I was on autopilot and I find this human design chart that I had printed out in 2000 after I went to a Barbara Brennan intro class where they told me I'm an empath. I'm like, what is an empath? Well, at least I'm not a psychopath, but what is that? So, I had this print and I'm like, what is that anyway? So then I started looking deeper into it. And of course, I like systems. Again, I like, computer system, body. Now it's the body system, body, mind, spirit systems. So I got this book and I have a simple design. I only have one channel and two centers. So it's like, that's easy.
As far as your human design profile. Yeah. As far as your human design profile for those that are listening.
So I started, looking into it and, reading and studying and all of a sudden everything made sense. Like how I felt on the inside, how I was, but trying to fit into society or fit into, there's only one style of teaching it and one style of doing it. And I always felt different, but I could never articulate it with anybody because I wouldn't even get the feedback. These days, I don't even need the feedback because that gave me, again, the individualization. Can't speak English. It's like, yeah, you're an individual person. You just have to know thyself. So that's when I had studied metaphysical science in 2012, but that really, the human design, and again, I'm not looking at it like, there are a lot of practitioners, they really take it like a religion and it's like, this is what Ra said. I'm like, oh, this is just crazy. Why are you guys, you're making it like.
You're not dogmatic. You're flexible with what you learn.
Like dogma, because it tells people, it puts people into something that they might not be. So I'm like,
well, let's unpack this because you're saying a lot of really potent stuff here, and I like it. So first, I love what you said is make it your own, right? Is this individual, and I love that over time you developed your confidence that you didn't seek the outside validation, right? You had that inner standing, and so that's really beautiful. And then again, you're impressing this notion of the allowing. Here, I like what you're saying. I call it allowing your natural expression, allowing what you called a while back. We talked about this, right? The allowing the weird, allowing your voice the way it wants to come forward, which is really beautiful. And then not taking societal conditioning, not taking these societal norms, and then adopting, which goes back to the individuation. So
You know
really
what? That also
potent stuff.
links to what you were saying, how you were as a little kid and how I was as a little kid, because we were already fighting the conditioning. That's why we
Right.
wanted to do it by ourselves. But eventually you give up because you just have to, you just have to
Allow.
to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But that's that fighting spirit. And that might be that, that sun moon phase that I told you about when we looked.
We'll leave that alone for now.
When did I discover that? Last year, usually I discover things when I'm frustrated. Yeah, and then after human design, I practice it a little bit. I practice it. I found a great teacher. We did some Live Your Design class, just experimenting and seeing what happens during the week, how you react towards people. So that's where I've,
So pause again. So pause again. That's another, again, I missed that on what I was going to say. So thank you. In a way, you reminded me. When you say the dogma, I also respect that about you, because you talk about always learning, always growing, always striving and innovating. You have to experiment. You have to play, which is really what when we started the recording and we set the intention today, it was this, let's play. Yeah, let's play, right? And
exactly.
I love that about you.
Not taking life too seriously. So that's what I learned from this whole experience. It's like, know thyself. That's not even a new thing. That's what, know thyself.
But you embodied it. You took the knowing and you embodied it.
Yes, because I always get frustrated. I've done so many things. I went through, you can't even imagine what kind of groups I studied this, especially the spiritual things, not so much the body work. I just take it and do it. But all these other things, I'm like, ugh, when I'm sitting there, like, that's usually my engine. Like, the fuel is like, it doesn't really work for me.
I love it.
Look for the things that feel right. And also, I don't talk about those things much, but if someone is open, it's like when someone says, oh, you have to teach. What is there to teach? I can show you where to learn those things. And then, because I used to teaching assist upledger classes, I like to assist because I teach you hands-on and I give you some, things you can learn. I do not want to be the teacher in the front who's talking about the theory. I don't, that's not me. I would never give someone like a mind reading. I'm going to show them, hey, this is what you are. That's the basics. So you can get this book, get this, go to this website, learn something. And then again, I got bored. It's more like frustration. It's also being bored. I got bored again and I'm like,
you channel it, as we said earlier. Well, it's funny because my brother says, and I learned this at a very young age, and I like this. So before we get into your legacy and the quotes, so to speak, to wrap up, he said it this way when I was a kid. He said to me, he said that spell guru. And then I spelled it and it was like, no, spell it a letter at a time and feel, you know how he is, Dr. S. And God bless him. I love his intensity, the Aries versus the Sagittarius. And he said, and then I felt into it and I was like, G, you are you. So I think what you're talking about is you show the people, their clients, their inner guru. You don't want to tell them their truth, your dogma. You want them to find their truth and to know thyself, to individuate, to come out of this pain, transform, and step into their natural expression, even if they think it's weird, which we're going to erase that word right now and not say weird. Whatever that flavor of their expression is.
Because, and then also, if you look at it, the majority of my clients, they don't have to do any spiritual work or whatever. They just come in, we're just treating the body.
Correct.
We're getting some of the restrictions on it. There's probably there's always a psycho-spiritual component.
It's what we said. You don't have to understand it.
Know what it is. Let it just move out.
Correct.
You might ask them, is there a color shape to it and where are we going to send it?
Correct.
Minister license, you can just tell me and we're just going to send it to God. It's like,
correct.
Don't be concerned that I'm going to take it. I'm not going to take it. I'm healing myself to let's just move through.
So a lot of beautiful stuff. So to wrap up, two things. So when you leave here, God willing, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be remembered for?
I thought about that last night. I want people who knew me and who I treated to just simply say, because of Tanja, my life got easier.
Beautiful. So
just that simple thing, just like life, like the life, like I do not want any. Sometimes that's the thing where I'm like thinking, those little babies. We all have rotations. We all have restrictions. We are growing inside a tight space. Mom might have a sick.
We all have pain.
So everybody, we all have pain, but it is so beautiful. Just even if it's just this one session, when you're young, it's just like, getting this out, and then life is still gonna happen, whatever the person has to do with it. But I want to just be remembered as like, just like how I remember my healer, how she, Sophia is her name. I don't even know if she's still alive. She's somewhere probably in Kyrgyzstan, who knows, in Russia, or who knows where she is. But just taking that heaviness off of us, also the ancestral component, whatever. But that's how I would like to be remembered, and I would like to have a mausoleum. A picture how I look like maybe now. I have to find a new picture.
Because your hair, you were so excited about your hair. I love you. So don't worry, we're both very we have both very strong
Virgo rising.
Yeah, you'll have your mausoleum next to my mausoleum, and then we'll have Habib's giant mausoleum with cherries overshadowing everybody's. No, I'm kidding. I love them. So lastly, and thank you so much here. I mean, I invite the listeners to go back and listen to this, because truly, before we wrap up with
we didn't even talk about some of the evolutionary astrology and how you
No, we're gonna have to bring you back. We're gonna have to bring you back and keep people waiting, because truly, before she shares her quote and we wrap up, I can't impress this enough. This is like not exaggeration. The information that she's offering in this through her experience is cutting edge. I've literally experienced her miracles firsthand. She's advanced to a point where she doesn't do manual therapy, folks. It's not Reiki. She explains, she surfs, my words, she surfs without even touching you, your nervous system, your body, to allow you to transform this pain. Everything. Yeah. I'm not doing you justice. So lastly, what's your favorite quote, inspired saying, so to speak, to leave everybody with for today?
Well, that was like, I had one yesterday, and then today is a new day. You know how it goes. Even if you would do this show,
you introverts, I love you.
Say other things. So I'm just gonna say what I downloaded yesterday, because I had a fever on Thursday, and I'm like, why am I? It's like, I mean, a fever, like an elevated temperature. I never get a fever. That's probably another problem, because I've never had a fever in my life. But when I get like to 99, it's like, oh yeah, Tanja is dying. So I'm like, okay, what am I not getting? What am I not listening to? Because obviously I'm supposed to listen to something. So finally I wrote this down, and then it's like, whoop, everything was fine. I'm healthy. So what I channeled was, and that's a spiritual Stasi, whatever component, working with the masters. So it's like, I do not work with the masters. I am the master. Incarnated and infiltrated.
One more time for dramatic effect, for the Sagittarius flair that I bring.
Well, I have Sagittarius, Neptune, and Jupiter.
Well, there you go. Bring it forward. Bring some of that forward.
No, I do not work with the masters. I am the master. Incarnated and infiltrated on this planet.
I love that.
For the people,
And that's what really is another good nugget.
And I didn't want to say it, and that's why I had the fever, because my spirit was like, you are gonna say it. If you do not write this out, I'm gonna make you sick. That's another thing. When I get sick, it's like my Tanja brain, left brain.
Allow, as she said, yes, very beautifully, again, very synchronistic, the beautiful bow around it, is that she had a fever. So obviously my body's communicating through this symptom. Listen to it.
But then want to say it.
This needed to come through. And then here, folks, again, she allowed what the body wanted to express, did not judge it, even if it pushed against her conditioning, and I'm saying that she may not like it, even if she's an introvert,
it's conditioning, I know.
And the beautiful thing is, what a beautiful way to wrap up, is that each one of us is a master.
Yes. Exactly.
And bringing out that master is how you transform the pain, how you find the ease.
Everybody is a master, because everybody is a piece of God.
I love it.
People don't like the word God. I mean, I didn't like the word God.
Whatever.
But then I liked it.
You get it. We get it. So thank you, Tanja. Yeah. Thank you. This has been an extra special episode, packed with really good information, really good wisdom, honest, raw sharing. Thank you for opening yourself. Thank you for sharing yourself. And thank you for having me. Here.
Thank you for getting me out of my
cave. It's it. I told you 2 years ago, and I was on your table. And one day, hopefully, I'll have you back to tell the crazy stories of when I was on your table, because I was a fun guinea pig.
You're gonna tell them, because I don't remember your stories, but I have some other. Yeah, that would be an interesting.
The
I think that would be a really great.
supernatural case studies with Tanja Seagraves. It'll be a
Yes.
special episode.
Because you know what? I tell people, sometimes I tell them stories like of what I remember or what I feel in the session they need to hear. Or when I ask them questions, it's not about me wanting to know it, because in the end I forget it.
Well, you're
anyway.
expressing what they may not
At
know
that
their
moment,
body.
they need to hear someone else's
Exactly.
story so they can see, oh, it's okay. It's okay to experience this, and it's okay to be like this. And then they can go into it and release it.
And that's why I had a very profound soul sister who helped me heal and transform, because exactly what she said. She's an example that you can do this too. And what a beautiful synchronicity with the theme of this show. So thank you, Tanja. Thank you for everybody for listening, for being here. Have a blessed day. And thank you for enjoying and indulging us.